Welcome to the None But Curious podcast. We're all about finding inspiration in life's uncertainties. Whether you're still figuring things out, questioning your beliefs, or just curious about the world, come hang out with us as we celebrate the beauty of not having all the answers.
What if you stopped searching for a life narrative, just for a little while? So many of us feel this almost invisible pressure to make our lives make sense, to explain who we are, where we are going, and why the last few years unfolded the way they did. We are asked, sometimes gently and sometimes not, to offer a story that ties everything together. A reason things happened, a lesson learned, a direction discovered. We are told implicitly and explicitly that meaning comes from turning experience into a story, from connecting all the dots, from looking back and saying, this led to that, and this is why I am who I am now. We are encouraged to find patterns, arcs, and transformations, and when we cannot, it feels like something is wrong with us. But psychology does not actually say that everyone needs a story to live well. That idea comes from a mix of research, culture, and expectations. When we look closely, the picture is more complex and more forgiving than we are often led to believe. Let's start by looking at why the idea of a life narrative became so powerful in the first place. In psychology, especially in the field of personality psychology, researchers like Jonathan Adler and his colleagues studied what is called narrative identity. The basic idea is that many people make sense of themselves by constructing a story about their life. Not a list of events, but a narrative that explains what those events meant and how they shaped who they became. In this view, identity is not only about traits or roles. It is about the story you tell yourself about how you got here, the challenges you faced, the turning points that mattered, the values you believe emerged along the way. Research has found that certain kinds of stories are associated with well-being. Stories that include a sense of agency or having a feeling of choice or influence over your life. Stories that include growth, redemption, or integration. Stories that allow people to see how they endured hardship, adapted, or found purpose. For some people, these narratives are linked to a stronger sense of meaning in life, more satisfying relationships, and even lower levels of depression over time. When storytelling works, it can help people feel anchored. It can help them understand themselves and communicate that understanding to others. This tells us that storytelling can be helpful, at least for some people, in certain circumstances. And that is the key point that often gets lost. These findings are correlations, not requirements. Even the researchers themselves are careful to say that narrative identity has what they call incremental validity. It adds something for some people, not everyone. And when psychologists look more closely, they find limits. Adler and his colleagues have shown that narrative coherence does not reliably predict well-being in every context. In periods of instability, grief, trauma, or major life transition, trying to force a coherent story can actually increase distress. When life is still unfolding, insisting on clarity can feel very premature. The pressure to explain what something meant before it's finished happening can be exhausting. Instead of relief, meaning-making can become another demand, another task to complete, another way to feel behind. Sometimes the healthiest response is not meaning-making, but patience. Sometimes the healthiest response is to let life unfold without insisting on explanation, to allow uncertainty to exist without treating it as a problem to solve. This is where a philosopher named Galen Strawson offers a helpful challenge. In his essay Against Narrativity, Strawson argues that not everyone experiences their life as a story in the first place. He suggests that the idea that humans are naturally narrative is overstated and that it quietly turns one way of being into a moral or psychological ideal. Strawson describes two broad ways people experience themselves over time. Some people are narrative. They naturally experience their life as continuous and connected. They feel a strong sense of personal history and future direction. They can tell stories that link the past to the present and the present to the future, and for them, This can be very stabilizing and meaningful. Others are episodic. They experience life more in the present moment without a strong sense of personal storylines stretching across time. Episodic people may remember the past and anticipate the future, but they don't feel a deep emotional identification with a continuous self across years. They feel experiences as they happen. They care, act ethically, and form relationships, but they do not automatically organize their life into a narrative about who they fundamentally are. Strawson's argument is simple and radical. Episodic people aren't broken. They are not immature. They are not less reflective or less whole. They simply do not live narratively, and psychology has no evidence that they should. When we treat life narratives as mandatory, they stop being tools and start being tests. Tests of insight, tests of progress, tests of whether we're doing life correctly. That pressure often turns inward. We tell ourselves that if we can't explain who we are right now, we must be failing. If we cannot connect the dots, we must be missing something. If our life doesn't yet make sense, then we must be doing it wrong. But there is another way psychology understands well-being, one that does not require a life story at all. Acceptance and commitment therapy, often called ACT, focuses on what is known as psychological flexibility. Research consistently shows that the ability to stay present, tolerate uncertainty, and act in ways that align with your values predicts well-being more reliably than having a coherent personal narrative. ACT introduces the idea of self as context. Instead of defining yourself by a story, you learn to see yourself as the space in which experiences happen. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, memories and identities come and go. None of them require permanent explanation. In this framework, you are not the story you tell about yourself. You are the awareness that notices stories forming and dissolving. You can observe your life unfolding without feeling pressured to narrate it, without needing to decide what it all means right now. Meaning does not come from explanation in this approach. It comes from relationship, from how you relate to what is here, from how you choose to act in alignment with what matters to you, even when the story is unfinished or unclear. This is not a rejection of meaning, it's a different kind of meaning, one rooted in presence, values, and actions rather than coherence or closure. What is striking is how well this fits with Strawson's idea of the episodic self. ACT offers a practical, psychological way to live well without narrating identity. And it aligns with what narrative psychology already tells us, which is that stories help some people some of the time, but not everyone. Not all people. Not all seasons. So, what if you stopped searching for a life narrative? What would that feel like? Psychology suggests that you might feel less pressure to explain yourself, less urgency to resolve uncertainty, more permission to live in a pause without labeling it as failure. You might notice that identity is not a problem to be solved, that you can live fully, ethically, and meaningfully without a complete story. And this doesn't mean that stories are bad. It does not mean that reflection is bad. It doesn't mean storytelling is useless. It just means stories are optional. They can emerge later. They can remain incomplete. They can change. And sometimes the most psychologically healthy thing you can do is let the story rest. And today's a good day to let the story drift while you remain present. Thank you for listening to this episode. If it resonated with you, please share it with somebody else you might feel will benefit from it. You can follow me on social media at NoneButCurious, subscribe to the podcast, or even check out my website, which will be updated soon, nonebutcurious.org. And in this season, as this story for all of us unfolds, be kind to yourself. Really. Take time to take care of yourself. It's crucial.